Welcome to this Tutors You Sociology topic video on crime and deviance. In this video we're going to look at a state crime, the infected blood scandal in the United Kingdom. The infected blood scandal is one of the gravest public health disasters in the UK's history, occurring between the 1970s and 1990s. Thousands of patients, including children, were given contaminated blood products through the National Health Service, leading to infections with life-threatening diseases such as HIV and hepatitis C. This incident has been widely recognised as a state crime, as it involved systematic failures by government institutions, regulatory bodies and policymakers whose actions, or lack of action, resulted in harm to citizens. During the 1970s, the NHS faced a shortage of blood products needed for treating conditions like haemophilia, a disorder that impairs blood clotting. To address this, the UK began importing blood plasma from commercial suppliers, primarily in the United States. However, much of this blood came from high-risk donors, such as prison inmates, drug users and others who were paid for their donations. The blood was not adequately screened for infectious diseases, and this lack of quality control led to contaminated blood products being introduced into the NHS supply chain. The consequences were catastrophic. Over 4,000 haemophiliacs and other patients were infected with hepatitis C, and more than 1,200 were infected with HIV. Many of these individuals have since died as a result of these infections. Despite growing evidence of the risks, government agencies failed to act decisively to protect the public, continuing to use contaminated products and failing to inform patients about the risks that they faced. In 1983, when concerns about the blood supply were raised in relation to the AIDS epidemic, the government and health authorities were slow to respond. By the late 1980s, safer, heat-treated blood products became available, but the damage had already been done. Victims and their families have since fought for justice, leading to public inquiries and debates over government accountability. But why is it a state crime? Well, sociologists define state crime as illegal or deviant activities perpetuated by or with the complicity of state officials or agencies. These crimes are typically committed in pursuit of state goals, such as cost saving or as a result of negligence or corruption within state institutions. The infected blood scandal meets these criteria in several ways. Firstly, a failure to protect citizens. The primary role of the state is to safeguard its citizens. In this case, the government and NHS failed in their duty of care. Officials knowingly used contaminated blood products, putting thousands at risk. This aligns with the sociological concept of state crime as a violation of human rights, specifically the right to health and safety. Evidence from public inquiry suggests that the UK government ignored warnings about risks associated with imported blood products. This negligence is an example of state deviance, where authorities fail to meet their moral and legal obligations, leading to harm. Thirdly, institutional secrecy. The scandal also involved efforts to withhold information from the public. Victims were not always informed that they had been infected, and in some cases they were denied access to their medical records. Sociologist David Friedrichs argues that secrecy is a key characteristic of state crime, as governments often seek to avoid accountability by covering up their wrongdoing. Another impact was the economic prioritisation over public health. The UK's reliance on imported blood products was largely driven by economic considerations. By outsourcing blood collection to cheaper, commercial suppliers, the government prioritised cost saving over the health of its citizens. From a Marxist perspective, this reflects the capitalist state's tendency to prioritise profit and efficiency over human welfare. And the sociological definition of state crime emphasises harm rather than legality. Even if the government's actions were not illegal at the time, they caused immense harm to individuals, families and communities. This aligns with Green and Ward's concept of state crime as organisational deviance, actions that deviate from ethical standards and result in widespread harm. The infected blood scandal illustrates several sociological theories about state crime. Firstly, the cultural normalisation of deviance. Within the NHS and government agencies, the use of contaminated blood products became normalised despite the risks. The concept of normalization of deviance explains how repeated exposure to risky practices can desensitize institutions, making unethical behavior seem routine. Strain theory, proposed by Merton, would also suggest that pressure to achieve specific goals, such as reducing NHS costs, can lead to deviance. In this case, economic pressures may have pushed officials to prioritise short-term financial savings over patient safety. From a critical perspective, the scandal reflects the power imbalance between the state and vulnerable citizens. Victims, particularly haemophiliacs, were often marginalised and lacked the resources to challenge the state effectively. This highlights how the state crimes disproportionately harm those with less power. And finally, techniques of neutralisation. Officials involved in the scandal often justified their actions using neutralisation techniques, such as denying responsibility or claiming that they lacked knowledge of the risks. This aligns with techniques identified by Sykes and Matzer, which individuals or institutions use to rationalise deviance. In summary, the infected blood scandal is a stark example of state crime, demonstrating how systemic failures, negligence and secrecy within government institutions can lead to devastating harm. Sociological perspectives help us to understand the structural and cultural factors that allow this tragedy to occur, from the prioritisation of economic efficiency to the normalisation of unethical practices. This case highlights the importance of scrutinising the role of the state in upholding or violating its responsibility to protect citizens. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on crime and deviance, looking at state crimes and the infected blood scandal. Thanks for watching.